Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for checking out another video. As you can tell, I'm wearing my Y&S Lexan shirt today. So if that doesn't give it away, right down here I have the Lexan glass, the Lexan plastic, whatever you want to call it, for La Fea, the Slow Integra. So as you can see, I've already got the Lexan here, also by Y&S Lexan. And now I have to put on the hatch. And one thing that trial and error I've been learning for the windows that I put first on the driver and passenger side, I painted the borders on the outside. I don't really like how that finish came out. On this one, I painted the borders on the inside and then riveted normal on the outside, and I think it looks a lot cleaner. So this is on the inside part of the panel itself, or the inside part of the Lexan. And basically I just trimmed around, not really trimmed, but peeled back the protective sheet that comes on top of the Lexan. This is all like a plastic layer. And then over the edges, I kind of formed some tape to give it a cleaner look. And it doesn't look absolutely perfect. The car's not a show car, obviously. She's an ugly girl. But it gives it somewhat of an accent when it has the borders painted. So now that that's all taped up and masked away, I gotta finish a little spot right there. We should be ready to start spraying it with the flat protective enamel that I'm using from Rust-Oleum. Just some flat black paint. And give it a couple coats of that. Got a very light coat just to get it to start adhering. Then we can paint over that so we get a good seal on the paint itself to the Lexan. One thing I want to mention, it is really cloudy, excuse me. It's really cloudy outside right now. It's been raining for like the past 4 or 5 days. I haven't driven the car since then because of that reason. And it's not the best weather to paint, although we are doing our best. But if you are going to be planning this ahead of time, try to pick a nice, dry, hot day. 3 minutes. So now we're going to start hitting it with the coat number 2. And for the first 2 coats, I don't really worry about having a heavy coat. I just want to make sure that it's lightly put on there. That way it, becomes even and it doesn't have any running issues. Then for the 3rd coat, we'll go a little bit heavier. Now coat 2 and 1 are pretty much all the way dry. There's a few spots that are just a little bit damp, but for the most part we're good. And I'll start on coat 3. For this one we want to be a little bit heavier. This one is a lot thicker, and instead of being spotty on some spots, this is actually like a full coat. You can see the reflection. This is 100% coverage all across the border. So even though this is a flat finish, it's gonna look a little shiny right now while it dries. We are gonna run to the store real quick and grab a tool that we're gonna be needing to take off the stock glass. And we should be back in time for this to already be dry to touch and be able to remove the masking tape. We are back from Lowe's right now with some stuff I'll go over in just a second. I've got the masking tape off of the Lexan, as well as the hatch itself. I've seen some people do this with the hatch or the body panel on the car. I've never personally done a hatch, so the person who sells this, Y&S Lexan, recommended that I do it this way. So we're gonna set it up right here and dive right into it. We have got an oscillating tool here, which is the tool that goes side to side like that with a blade. That would be the blade right there. And basically what they told us to do was get the blade to go underneath and start cutting the actual sealant right there. Some people do a guitar string, or they sell specific strings to cut through the sealant. From what they were telling me, it's best to do it this way. But if you have luck doing it the other way, then more power to you. So far we have the rear glass removed completely. Most of the adhesive is already made flush with a scraper, and the rest shouldn't really be an issue. You just want to make sure that it can seat evenly. For the most part, this is. Next thing that we're going to do is test fit the Lexan itself. As you can see, the outside of it hangs over, which is obvious since it does have a curvature to it. This is going to bend in this way as soon as we have it on. And since I am alone, it's going to be a little bit hard to do this by myself right now. So I'm going to go over to Lowe's and pick up these things right here. So basically what I'm going to do is clamp them on the side with these big jaw things so they can stay in place while I measure out everything and drill out the holes. All right, now I have the Lexan clamped onto the hatch, and I want to show you exactly how I'm doing this so far. I have it so there's a very small gap between the Lexan and the hatch itself. That way I can get as much as a curvature that I can to mimic the OEM curve of the hatch. And this is obviously going to be curving down forward as well. That way it can lift up completely OEM length and function as it should. Beautiful thing about Y&S is that they always take into account when cutting and measuring out these pieces of Lexan that it's correct for an OEM type fit. All right, before I show you guys the whole drilling process, I want to go over the material that we're going to be using as in hardware. I have these Weather Max stainless steel nylon inserted lock nuts, and this is very important when you're doing the rear hatch because first of all, you have water contact. Even if it's not out in the rain, you're still gonna have some type of moisture buildup, and you don't wanna get something that can rust. Second of the important things about this is that it has nylon. So there's gonna be a lot of vibration in the car, and you wanna make sure that the nuts won't back out, and you don't wanna have to run a washer or unnecessary hardware. So that's perfect for the nut part of it. For the bolts, you could use button head, like Allen type fittings if you don't want to use this, like for the top. I just chose to use the pan Phillips machine just because it's regular a Phillips head on the top. And this is also stainless steel. They didn't have the exact size that I wanted for thread count, but this is fine. It's a 10-22 by 1, and you just want to make sure that it matches the nut that you're going to be using for it. Obviously, it has to be corresponding. And this is 1 inch long, each one. Okay, so I have the rear of the Lexan and the carbon drilled out. I don't have it bolted on at all, but I do have everything drilled out to accept the 9 bolts that I'll be using on the back piece of this. The reason I'm doing it this way, I want to have one end, not including the curves, bolted on. That way I know that it's centered and that I can work off of it after that. Now that I have the glass taken off, I want to show you exactly where the bolt holes are. And all of this was pretty much eyeballed. I'm sure that if you take your time and you measure and you make sure that everything is equal length from each other, then it would come out a lot cleaner. I just cut a piece of a zip tie and was using that to measure. But I'm guessing that's about 5 or 6 inches away from each hole. Right now, what I'm gonna do to extend the opening on the bottom, I'm gonna just get our drill and I'm gonna drill a little bit longer just so it can contact the back end right here. And when I start seeing the dimples of where I need to drill the bottom, I'll use a bigger drill, just big enough to accept a 10mm socket on the bottom end. After trying to drill out the bottom of the carbon, I figured out that I don't have any drill bits that are big enough to be able to drill out a hole acceptable for 10mm socket. So I ended up, if you can see right here, notching the carbon, but it doesn't really change the integrity of the hatch, obviously. It's just a little bit right there missing, compared to right there, drilling it out with a bigger bit. So what I did with a Dremel, a little wireless, you can use whatever you have access to, as long as it's like a little cutting wheel. I was able to notch out exactly what I need. And using this space right here, I can very easily put the socket behind the area of where I have the bolt in the Lexan. For example, right here, the bolt's gonna sit right there, and you can kind of peek it right there. And I'm just gonna cut this out real quick. And a good thing I have eye protection right now because this just broke on me. But you get the point. I'm notching it out, and I'm basically gonna have like a little window underneath every single bolt location. Right now I just have to go find some more discs because that one just destroyed itself on me. All right, so I have the bottom bolted on. This is not the final install, obviously, but I wanna show you how it's gonna come out. As you can see, I have every bolt and nut location notched out. Not all of them are already bolted all the way, but at least the corners are, just to show you guys exactly how I plan on doing the rest. So I have one whole side right here drilled, already in place, exactly how we're gonna put it. Only one thing that I encountered, the 1-inch bolts are a little bit too short. So I went back to the store, got a 1.5 inch. And you can see, and I'm dropping everything. Great. If you can see right here, they'll grab on, but they won't have a lot of thread. And since these are locking nuts, we wanna make sure that it goes through the whole nut. That way it can get to the nylon insert and actually do its locking job. I'm off to this side now. I'm gonna clamp down this portion, that way it has the pressure to curve it. What I'm doing is I'm clamping with 2 jaws around the area that I'm gonna drill. So the next one that I'm gonna make is right around here. So I wanna have as much curve in that specific area right now. So I do have a couple other clamps, so I could go ahead and do the rest of it. All right, so I have all the curve that the natural glass has. So like we did on the other side, this little lip right here is what we're gonna be drilling into. All right, so I have this side drilled out the same way that I have the other side, and I'm also using the 1.5 inch bolts on this side. And the way that they sat on the other side of it, the stud itself of the bolt sat like within this well, so it wasn't hitting anything, so we got lucky there. Worst case scenario, we could always just put the nut on and then trim the bottom of the bolt. That way it's flush to how we would need it, but this seems to be pretty good. I'm gonna throw the nuts on there just so it can pull this curvature exactly how it should be, and then I'll start drilling out the top. We got this side exactly how we want it, the bottom how we want it, and this side as well. Just gotta put one bolt up here, but I have to trim something underneath. But everything should be good on the sides and the bottom. Now we go over to the top. And I think I'll do like maybe 6 bolts up top. But everything is mainly formed already. That's the important part. So this is basically just a support to keep the top down. And I'm gonna try to have it curve as much as possible, just so it can be like aerodynamically correct, since it's still a little bit up from the body. But that shouldn't be much of an issue. So yeah, let me put this on time lapse again. So I didn't really measure anything out for the top. I kind of just eyeballed the length between each one. There are, I think, 3 of them that I have to look on the bottom and trim out. And we're just gonna use the same method that we use on the front, on this part right here. Basically using the Dremel and cutting out a square so I can fit a socket in there. And a few of them went straight through. I think the easiest thing in all reality is gonna be to take off the whole hatch, which is only 4 bolts. That way we can tighten everything down and make sure that it's all flush and even. And let me see if I can get the camera. I'm not sure if that'll pick it up, but there's just 4 bolts that there's a little bracket right there and right there that lead into the car. And on the roof skin, you'll see the little 4 nuts to take off of the bolts. It's kind of dark, but it's those 2 and those 2 right there. And then that whole piece just lifts off. All right, so I have the top portion drilled out and cut in many areas. You can see the cuts right there. And there were a few areas that I decided not to cut a square out just because it was right at the support, the actual bracket that holds the hatch onto the body. So I decided not to cut it there. And here's one of the examples. I ended up just riveting it. I know that I wanted to go for the same look all across, but that's what I ended up having to do there. If you're doing this at home, it'd be a much better idea to measure everything out correctly and not kind of just wing it like I did. But that pretty much sums up the install of the Lexan glass. I can pull this off. And you want to make sure to pull all the cover protective sheet off after you're done installing, because you don't want it unnecessarily scratching or anything. And man, it looks great. I think this is a 20% tint that I got it in. And whew, let me tell you, I am in love with how it came out. I'm really happy. Wow. I can't stress enough how much I love the components from Y&S Lexan. They're absolutely perfect, not only in quality of the Lexan itself, but fitment on the car itself, and the customer service that they back their customers and are always there for your questions, and for always supplying a wonderful product. And I look forward to always sporting your Lexan windows and glass all around the car. So far I have the hatch, quarters, the driver and passenger doors, and I still have the stock glass up top. But I'll probably end up doing the Lexan windshield sometime next year. For now, I'm just keeping it stock glass though. This is what I was telling you guys about the curve of the Lexan. If you remember towards the beginning of the actual install, this was slanted all the way out. It reached about right here. And once we were able to place it exactly how we wanted, it has that stock curve. I just have to tighten down the bolts a little bit right here. And although the car already is fully gutted and it has the doors cut, which I have a video on, I'm going to be showing you how to cut all the webbing out of the back, as well as get as much weight out of it as possible. So if you have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comment section below. I'm going to put Y&S Lexan's contact information down below as well. If you wouldn't mind, just make sure to hit that like button if it helped you in any way, or you have some thoughts in the future to use their wonderful products. And like always, stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.